busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
From New York, we get you to the sandy shores of Durban, where I'll bring you all the glitz, glam, and happenings from the world of showbiz.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is a World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, Russian President Vladimir Putin has won a landslide victory in the Russian presidential elections. Early results show Putin winning 87% of the vote, the highest ever results in Russia's post-Soviet history, further solidifying and cementing his position as Russia's longest-serving leader.
Also on the show, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, where he shared concerns regarding the high number of civilian casualties and insufficient aid reaching Gaza. The meeting comes after Netanyahu told a cabinet meeting that Israel would push into Rafah, where 1.4 million displaced Palestinians have sought shelter. We are going to be tracking these developments very closely and a lot more in the next 60 minutes. Let's get you started with the headlines. This is World DNA.
President Vladimir Putin claims a landslide victory in Russia's election, cements his already tight grip on power in a victory he says shows that Moscow was right to stand up to the West and send its troops into Ukraine.
After a massive victory in election, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow is ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games, but would need to take Russia's interests on the front line into account.
Benjamin Netanyahu vows to press ahead with sending Israeli troops into Rafah, tells German Chancellor Olaf Scholz that Israel would not leave civilians trapped in Gaza's southernmost city when its forces begin their assault.
North Korea fires ballistic missiles into the sea for the first time in 2 months as US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visits Seoul for a conference hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol on advancing democracy. And our top focus as of now comes in from Russia, and this comes as no surprise. President Vladimir Putin has won a landslide victory in the Russian presidential election.
Right, Shivan. The outcome means that 71-year-old Putin is set to embark on another 6-year term in office as he cements his strong grip over the country.
Reports claim Putin won more than 87% of the vote. Communist candidate Nikolai Khartunov finished second with just under 4%. Nationwide turnout was 74.22% at about 1800 GMT when polls closed, and in 2018 the turnout was 67.5%. In his victory speech, Putin said he will prioritize tasks associated to war in Ukraine.
In general, the initiative is fully on the side of the Russian army. In some directions, our guys are butchering the enemy. We are advancing every day. Gradually, very delicately, but every day. This is a bit more than active defense, but we all see this anyway.
Putin criticized the US political and judicial systems as he says the whole world is laughing at Washington, D.C. He also said he would work with whoever wins the US election, expressing no preference for any contestant.
Putin, in his speech, warned the West that the presence of Western troops in Ukraine could push the world to the brink of World War III. However, the Russian leader said he is ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games.
I do not know about the statement of France's president. We are ready to discuss any issues, but as always, within any situation, we will proceed from the interests of the Russian Federation and, of course, the situation at the front line.
Meanwhile, Western countries condemned the election. The United States said that the vote was neither free nor fair. Germany called it a pseudo-election under an authoritarian ruler. UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron criticized the illegal holding of elections on Ukrainian territory.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Putin of leading a dictatorship in Russia, while adding that Russia's presidential election was an illegitimate imitation.
Thousands of demonstrators protested against Putin. The demonstrations took place at polling stations both inside Russia and abroad. In one of these polling stations, Navalny's widow was also there. Yulia Navalnaya said that she wrote her late husband's name on the ballot paper.
The Russian presidential election witnessed an absence of any real challengers, as major opposition figures are abroad, in jail, or are dead.
But for more on this, we're now being joined by Peter Kuznick, Professor of History and Director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University, and he's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Mr. Kuznick. I want to first start by asking you that the winner isn't really a surprise in Russia. Tell us about the impact of Putin's victory in the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war. We heard Putin's victory speech where he asserted that he would prioritize tasks associated with the war in Ukraine.
Yes, Putin made clear that his number one priority in his next term is to win the war in Ukraine, to end the war on Russia's terms. And it appears from the polling, these election results, and the polling from the Levada Institute, which is independent and universally respected, that the war is very, very popular inside Russia. So that's the one of the ingredients behind Putin's victory in this election. That, of course, plus the fact that there was no real opposition and that there has not been freedom of speech for quite some time in Russia, especially when it comes to criticizing the war.
Mr. Kuznick, now Putin made few remarks. I just want you to assess them both. On one hand, he said that he is willing and he's open to peace talks, and he's also open to consider the proposal from France regarding a ceasefire. But he also mentioned that the presence of Western boots on Ukrainian soil can push this war towards a third world war. How do you see these two statements together?
Putin has been saying for a while now that he is ready to negotiate. Mm-hmm. What that means, though, is that negotiations will take place on Russia's terms, which Zelensky has ruled out. Zelensky says that there'll be no negotiation until every last Russian troop has left all of Ukraine's territory and Crimea is back in Ukraine's hands. Of course, that's a non-starter for the Russians. What Macron has proposed is a ceasefire that will last during the time of the Olympics in Paris. Mm-hmm. That's from July 26th through August 11th. Putin has said he's open to a ceasefire as long as it's on Russia's terms and what's going on in the front lines is not weakened in any way from Russia's standpoint. But Russia has also made clear that Macron's calls for sending NATO troops into Ukraine at this point, Putin has ruled that out and has threatened, or not threatened, but has suggested that this could lead to World War III. This would lead to a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO, which Putin believes and has said and warned could lead to World War III. But you've got the hardliners in Europe. That's mostly Macron and the Poles, but also some of the Baltic states as well, have been very hardline and are calling for, and the United States has said that if that's what the Europeans want to do, the U.S. is okay with that, but the U.S. will not be sending troops.
Mr. Guzek,
however, that kind of escalation is very, very dangerous.
Yes. I also wanted to get your thoughts on this. Now, Putin also mentioned that he's willing to talk about peace, but it can't be because the West is out of ammunition, that they regain their ammunition and a year and a half or 2 years later, they're back for where we are right now. Do you feel, Putin is justified in saying this, that they want to end this on common terms and not on the fact that they are out of arms? He's considering a peace talk as a justification because they're out of arms. Do you feel it that way?
Well, that's an interesting comment. I mean, both sides are worried that if they get a peace, an inconclusive peace victory, then the fighting is going to start up again in a short period of time. Lloyd Austin has said that if Russia has a victory in Ukraine, then Russia and NATO will be at war again within a few years. Putin is concerned about the same thing. So both sides want a definitive victory, but it's clear at this point that Russia has the upper hand on the battlefield, that the West is not able to deliver, and that Ukraine is in a very weak position right now.
Yes.
So we don't know. Let's sit down and start talking and figure out if there's a basis that can be agreed upon that will represent Ukraine's continued existence as a sovereign, independent state, as well as Russia's security interests.
All right, that was Peter Kuznick joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
And in news just coming in, Pakistan has launched airstrikes on the hideouts deep inside Afghanistan in parts of Kunnar and Paktika. And this is in retaliation to TTP attacks on the military on the weekend.
Well, in the early hours of Saturday, a group of 6 terrorists attacked security forces post in General area Mir Ali of North Waziristan district as own troops foiled the initial attempt of intrusion. The terrorists rammed an explosive-laden vehicle into the post, followed by multiple suicide bombing attacks. During the attacks, personnel attacked 5 personnel. I repeat that 5 personnel of the security forces were killed. All terrorists were killed in retaliatory exchange, and 2 Pakistani security forces officers were also killed.
And that's news just coming in. Pakistan has launched airstrikes on TTP hideouts deep inside Afghanistan in parts of Kunnar and Paktika. And this attack is in retaliation to TTP attack on the military on the weekend. And for more on this, we are now being joined by Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik from Islamabad.
Well, Pakistan has conducted airstrikes deep inside Afghan territory a short while back. This was in retaliation to the attack that took place in North Waziristan about 48 hours ago that killed at least 7 military personnel, including a lieutenant colonel. Now, 3 locations, as what we understand, have been targeted. This is as per sources, and these locations that have been targeted are that of Kunnar, Paktika, and in Khost in Afghanistan. These locations are said to be dubbed to be TTP hideouts and their camps. While we await an official statement on the matter from the Pakistani side, but multiple sources in Afghanistan have confirmed of the development, and this looks like apparently in retaliation to the attack that took place in North Waziristan about 48 hours ago that killed 7 military personnel, including a captain of the Pakistani military and a lieutenant colonel as well. Now, this is the first such instance since April 2022 that Pakistan has utilized air power to conduct an airstrike deep inside Afghanistan. The last such instance was done in Khost and Kunar on a smaller scale in April 2022. That too was in retaliation to a terror attack that had targeted the Pakistani military.
We now shift focus to Israel, where the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu railed against growing criticism from top ally United States.
And this is against his leadership amid the devastating war with Hamas, while he has described calls for a new election as inappropriate.
Netanyahu said that he is determined to go ahead with the Rafah assault, with many Israeli allies asking for no assault without a plan to protect civilians. In Washington, President Joe Biden and Ireland's Prime Minister Leo Varadkar stressed on the importance of increasing humanitarian aid in Gaza and working towards a two-state solution. More in our next report. Check it out.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday pushed back fiercely against what he described as international pressure over the war in Gaza. At a cabinet meeting, he said, "To our friends in the international community, I say, is your memory so short? So quickly you forgot about October 7th, the worst massacre committed against Jews since the Holocaust?" And he repeated his determination to send forces into Rafah, the city on the border with Egypt, overrun by civilian refugees who fled their shattered homes elsewhere in the Gaza Strip. He said, "No international pressure will stop us from achieving all the goals of the war, eliminating Hamas, freeing all of our hostages, and ensuring that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel. In order to do that, we will operate in Rafah too." Earlier on Sunday, Netanyahu also hit back at a speech made last week by the U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. The Democrat and long-standing supporter of Israel stunned observers when he directly criticized Netanyahu.
The fourth major obstacle to peace is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
And called for new elections in Israel. Speaking on CNN, Netanyahu said Schumer's comments were, quote, totally inappropriate. But Netanyahu is facing pressure from inside Israel as well.
Election now to change the Prime Minister and the whole ministers.
Thousands of Israelis in Tel Aviv called for an election now during a protest against the government on Saturday night. Hamas fighters killed 1,200 people in the October attack, according to Israeli tallies, triggering a massive assault on Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel's air and ground campaign in the enclave has killed more than 31,600 people. Most of its 2.3 million residents have been driven from their homes, and aid agencies say the population is on the brink of famine. Israel's allies have piled pressure on Netanyahu not to attack Rafah, where more than 1 million displaced people from other parts of the devastated enclave have sought shelter.
We cannot stand by and watch Palestinians risk starvation. That's not us.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met with Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Sunday and said he supported Israel's right to defend itself, but that along with the military objectives, there were humanitarian needs as well.
Take the ground offensive in Rafah. The military logic is one consideration, but there is a humanitarian logic as well. How should more than 1.5 million people be protected? Where should they go?
Scholz said he pressed Netanyahu about the need to provide comprehensive humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza.
Well, we're still on with the continuous coverage of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Israel's offensive has displaced most of Gaza's 2.3 million people from their homes. According to the UN, a quarter of Gaza's population is starving.
And of course, this comes as airdrops by the US and other nations, they still continue, while deliveries on a new sea route have also begun. But aid groups say that more ground routes and fewer Israeli restrictions are indeed needed to meet humanitarian needs in any significant way. A World Central Kitchen staff member posted a video showing the last pallets of aid being unloaded off the first Gaza aid supply ship. Meanwhile, the founder too encouraged other countries to use the same route for aid.
All right, there it is, the last 2 pallets of food getting loaded onto the last truck. Behind me, off of the barge, is the open arms boat back there. 200 tons of food delivered here in northern Gaza. It's going to go up to Gaza City, not tonight, it's pretty late, but soon.
The World Health Organization's regional director, Hanan Balkhi, visited Gaza's aid warehouses in Egypt's Arish and Rafah border crossings. Balkhi checked on medical evacuees from Gaza receiving treatment in the Arish hospital there. She also called for a swift ease to the land borders of Gaza for more aid to get inside.
We hope that there will be a swift easing, especially for the land borders, because there are land, air and seaports. The most beneficial for the residents of the occupied lands to have the land ports facilitated and eased. God willing, of all these things happen soon, and we hope for quick peace for this problem.
2 airplanes were also seen from Israel dropping humanitarian aid packages into northern Gaza. An official Jordanian news agency said that their military conducted 6 airdrops carrying food into Gaza involving Jordan, Egypt, US and Germany.
On the other hand, the European Union has announced an $8.06 billion funding package for Egypt as a part of a push to stem migrant flows to Europe that has been criticized by rights groups. Egypt's economic adversity has pushed increasing numbers to migrate in recent years. Even then, Egypt's strategic importance has been underscored by the war in Gaza, where Egypt is trying to mediate between Israel and Hamas and also increase the supplies of humanitarian aid.
We've also agreed with EU leaders on rejecting an Israeli military operation in Rafah, which would double the humanitarian catastrophe that civilians in the Gaza Strip are suffering from, in addition to the effects of that operation on liquidating the Palestinian cause, which Egypt outright rejects.
North Korea has fired a ballistic missile into the sea after a break of 2 months, and this comes at a time when US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is visiting South Korea.
Right, Shivan. According to South Korea's military, multiple short-range missiles were fired from a region south of the North's capital, Pyongyang. The launch was also reported by Japan's Coast Guard. Japan said what appeared to be a second ballistic missile fell outside its exclusive economic zone area.
On the 14th of January, North Korea fired an intermediate-range hypersonic missile. Then a month later, it launched multiple cruise missiles off its east coast, and that included a new surface-to-sea missile. The latest launch comes as the militaries of South Korea and United States carried out large-scale annual joint military drills, and the drills that lasted for 10 days ended on the 14th of March.
Meanwhile, Blinken's visit to Seoul comes as allies are stepping up efforts to execute the so-called extended deterrence in response to security threats from North Korea.
Blinken is attending the 3rd Summit for Democracy conference hosted by South Korea. The summit is an initiative of US President Joe Biden. There, the US Secretary of State will be meeting South Korean counterpart. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is currently in South Korea, the first stop of his South Asia tour, and Washington's top diplomat will also visit Philippines.
And this as the US moves to reinforce ties with these two regional allies. Blinken arrived in South Korea to attend its 3rd Democratic Summit. He will be meeting South Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yul for the 2nd time this month. Well, attendees at the summit scheduled for March 18th to 20th includes representatives from civil society, NGOs and the government. In the summit, Blinken said that technology should be employed to sustain democratic values, while adding that like-minded governments and their people are working together to promote free and fair elections.
Blinken's visit to Seoul comes as allies are stepping up efforts to execute the so-called extended deterrence in response to security threats from North Korea. Seoul is one of Washington's key allies. The United States has stationed about 27,000 troops in South Korea to help protect it from nuclear-armed North Korea.
Seoul's conservative president, Yoon Suk-yeol, has strengthened ties with Washington and sought to bury the historical hatchet with former colonial power Japan to better guard against Pyongyang's threats. And well, before we end this bulletin, let's get you a glimpse of the biggest parade held in Dublin to celebrate Irish culture on St. Patrick's Day.
And over 5,000 took part in the colourful celebrations in the Irish capital. Take a look at these visuals.
And it's time now for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. We will be back. When we get back, gang violence in Haiti has taken a toll on its healthcare system. According to aid workers, medical supplies are running critically low in the Caribbean country. We'll get you the full report.
Also on the other side of the show, amid a global landscape of uncertainty, India emerges as a beacon of hope with its strong hiring outlook. According to recent surveys, the nation allegedly has the strongest employment prospects globally. All the details coming up right after this quick short break.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
From New York, we get you to the sandy shores of Durban, where I'll bring you all the glitz, glam, and happenings from the world of showbiz.
Welcome to the Eras Tour. And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha and Shivan. And on the show so far, Russian President Vladimir Putin has claimed a landslide victory in Russia's election, and this has cemented his already tight grip on power. In victory, he says, shows that Moscow was right to stand up to the West and send troops into Ukraine.
Also, breaking news which came in from Pakistan, which has launched airstrikes on TTP hideouts deep inside Afghanistan in the regions of Kunar and Paktika. And this is, of course, in retaliation to the attack on military outposts carried out by the TTP, and which happened on Saturday. We are tracking that very closely with ground reports coming in as well. Stay tuned. This is World DNA. Let's get you started with the headlines.
President Vladimir Putin claims a landslide victory in Russia's election, cements his already tight grip on power. In a victory, he says, shows that Moscow was right to stand up to the West and send its troops into Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow is ready for talks on a French proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine during the Olympic Games, but would need to take Russia's interests on the front line into account.
Benjamin Netanyahu vows to press ahead with sending Israeli troops into Rafah, tells German Chancellor Olaf Scholz that Israel would not leave civilians trapped in Gaza's southernmost city when its forces begin their assault.
North Korea fires ballistic missiles into the sea for the first time in 2 months as US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visits Seoul for a conference hosted by President Yoon Suk-yeol on advancing democracy. We have been tracking the gang violence which has been continuing in Haiti. Now it has, of course, taken a toll on its healthcare system as well. According to aid workers, medical supplies are running critically low in the Caribbean country.
In the past 2 weeks, hospitals have been set ablaze and doctors have been murdered. Several facilities, including trauma care centers, have been ransacked as well. As of now, there's only one public hospital that remains operational in the country's capital, and that too is expected to shut down soon. This is when the number of emergency patients have risen due to the ongoing violence in Haiti.
Fighting between heavily armed gangs, which has forced the resignation of the country's prime minister, is still continuing. Places from police stations to government buildings to the international airport there all have come under attack by armed bandits. Civilians are being struck by stray bullets on a daily basis.
According to the United Nations estimates, at least 15,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in the country. Healthcare workers are staying home to avoid being caught in the crossfire of street violence. And this has led to a rise in the number of preventable deaths of pregnant women and elderly people. A recent MSF survey has found that 4 in every 10 deaths are now being caused by violence.
Caribbean leaders and the United States are supporting a transitional council that could take over the country, but several key factions have refused to participate in the process, while gang leader Jimmy Barbecue Shiridzia has rejected any solution backed by the international community.
And now shifting our focus to India. A day after the elections dates were announced in India by the Election Commission, the two major rival blocs, we're talking about the ruling National Democratic Alliance NDA and the opposition INDIA Alliance bloc, held campaign rallies in South and West India.
Well, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the NDA rally in Andhra Pradesh, where BJP is trying to make its foothold a day after he visited the neighbouring southern states of Telangana and Karnataka. On the other hand, the opposition Congress party leader Rahul Gandhi concluded his Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra in Maharashtra.
The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed a grand NDA rally in the state on Sunday, marking the NDA's first such public meeting in Andhra Pradesh in 10 years. The voting for the 175-member Andhra Pradesh Assembly on Lok Sabha will take place on the 13th of May. The BJP has formed an alliance with Telugu Desam Party and Janasena for the elections. BJP will contest 6 Lok Sabha and 10 Assembly seats, while the TDP will fight in 17 parliamentary and 144 state seats.
इस बार चुनावों के परिणाम 4 जून को आने वाले हैं। अब पूरा देश कह रहा है 4 जून को 400 पार। विकसित भारत के लिए 400 पार। विकसित आंध्र प्रदेश के लिए 400 पार।
Meanwhile, in Maharashtra, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi announced that the opposition is united in its battle against one power.
हम एक व्यक्ति के खिलाफ भी नहीं लड़ रहे हैं, ना हम बीजेपी के खिलाफ लड़ रहे हैं, ना हम एक व्यक्ति के खिलाफ लड़ रहे हैं। एक व्यक्ति को चेहरा बनाकर ऊपर डाल रखा है। हिंदू धर्म में शक्ति शब्द होता है, हम शक्ति से लड़ रहे हैं, एक शक्ति से लड़ रहे हैं।
Maharashtra, one of India's most populous state, will have a 5-phase elections. The state is crucial to the BJP's plans for securing the numbers to win a 3rd straight term in power. In the 2014 and 2019 Lok Sabha polls, the BJP and its ally Shiv Sena won 42 and 41 of Maharashtra's 48 seats respectively. The NDA will have to replicate the same performance this time around to maintain its winning rally.
The BJP, Shiv Sena and the Congress Nationalist Party had a Nationalist Congress Party had a direct contest in the last 2 Lok Sabha elections in Maharashtra. The state accounts for the maximum number of lawmakers to the parliament after Uttar Pradesh. Amid a global landscape of uncertainty, India emerges as a beacon of hope with its robust hiring outlook.
According to recent surveys, the country has the strongest employment prospects globally. And this translates to the highest net employment outlook, a measure of hiring intent surpassing the likes of US and China.
Well, the latest Manpower Group Employment Outlook survey reveals a hiring surge that extends across various sectors. Healthcare and life sciences lead the pack, with 44% of companies planning to expand their workforce, followed closely by communication services and information technology.
Notably, North India emerges as the most optimistic region with a hiring outlook of 40%. Very large organizations are driving this growth with a net employment outlook of 44%.
Well, this positive outlook extends to white-collar jobs as well. Naukri's Hiring Outlook survey reveals that 92% of recruiters anticipate new or replacement hiring in the first half of 2024. Now, interestingly, the tech sector is witnessing a shift with a growing focus on filling roles within non-tech sectors.
Now, moreover, attrition rates, the rate at which employees depart. And now for stories from the world of technology. Russia has revealed that approximately 160,000 cyber attacks targeted the nation's remote electronic voting portals. However, the attacks were successfully blocked by the country.
Additionally, 30,000 cyber attacks were directed at the remote voting systems monitoring portal. According to Russian officials, the cyber attacks had surged on Saturday but ultimately failed in their intent to infiltrate the systems. Russian election authorities stated that cyber attacks on Moscow's information systems were traced back to the US and the UK.
The voting procedure for Russia's 8th presidential election started on March 15th and concluded on March 17th. Remote electronic voting was introduced in parts of the country for the first time. According to a recent report, AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini exhibit racial biases against speakers of African American English, or AAVE, is a dialect created and spoken by the African American community. According to the researchers, these language models, which are commonly used for tasks like job screening, were found to hold stereotypes about AAVE speakers. The study showed that these speakers were often described as stupid and lazy by the AI models. As per the study, the speakers were recommended for lower-paying jobs by AI. AI models could penalize job contestants who switch between AAVE and standard American English, impacting their employment probability. Experts caution that without proper regulation, the widespread use of these language models in areas like hiring could increase instances of discrimination.
UK's Labour Party is considering proposals to combat AI deepfakes. The proposal aims to ban nudification tools used for non-consensual pornography. Not just that, the proposal aims to ask multiple political parties to come together and agree on avoiding deepfake technology for campaigning purposes as well. According to experts, by outlawing dedicated nudification tools and imposing obligations on AI developers, the rise of harmful and fraudulent deepfakes can be prevented. As per a policy paper by the Labour Together think tank, parties should refrain from using deepfake tech for campaigning. The think tank also proposes exceptions to media coverage, bans during elections in the UK to address misinformation that could go viral as people head to the polls.
On the world of sports now, Amad Diallo scored in stoppage time of extra time as Manchester United defeated rivals Liverpool 4-3 to knock them out of the FA Cup in the quarter-final.